Have you ever wondered if you might be receiving the most sacred gift of our faith incorrectly, unknowingly blocking the very graces that could transform your life completely? Right now, in churches around the world, millions of Catholics approach the altar with sincere hearts, yet many are making silent mistakes that prevent heaven's full blessings from reaching their souls. This isn't about judgment or condemnation. This is about awakening to a reality that the great mystic and saint, Padre Pio of Pietrelcina, warned us about throughout his extraordinary life. The man who bore the wounds of Christ on his own body, who could read souls like open books and who performed countless miracles, left us urgent warnings about how we receive Holy Communion that most Catholics have never heard. Padre Pio wasn't just any priest. He was a living saint who experienced visions of Jesus and Mary, who could bilocate, and whose very presence brought healing to thousands. When he spoke about the Eucharist, he spoke from direct experience with the divine mysteries. He would often say that the moments during and after Holy Communion were the most powerful opportunities for miracles, healing, and spiritual transformation that any soul could experience on earth. Yet he witnessed with profound sorrow how many faithful Catholics were unknowingly receiving this sacred gift in ways that limited or even blocked the extraordinary graces God wanted to pour into their lives. The tragedy is that these mistakes are often invisible to us. We approach the altar with good intentions. We follow the basic rituals we've been taught. Yet something crucial is missing. Padre Pio identified specific errors that turn what should be our most intimate encounter with Jesus into a mere routine, transforming the most powerful moment of our spiritual week into something ordinary and ineffective. These aren't complex theological concepts. They're practical, actionable insights that can revolutionize your spiritual life starting from your very next Mass. What you're about to discover isn't just another religious teaching. It's a divine blueprint for receiving the full power of the Eucharist as revealed by one of the Church's greatest mystics. Padre Pio didn't share these insights to burden us with more rules, but to unlock the supernatural potential that lies dormant in every communion we receive. When you understand and apply these teachings, you're not just avoiding mistakes. You're positioning yourself to receive miracles, healing, peace, and transformations that will astound you. Before I reveal these life-changing truths that Padre Pio shared with his spiritual children, I need you to understand something fundamental. The Eucharist isn't just a symbol or a remembrance. It's the actual presence of Jesus Christ, body, blood, soul, and divinity. When you receive communion properly, according to Padre Pio's wisdom, you're not just participating in a ritual, you're inviting the Creator of the universe to dwell intimately within your heart, bringing with him all the power to heal, bless, and transform every aspect of your existence. Imagine if you discovered that every time you received Holy Communion, you had access to the same divine power that raised Jesus from the dead, yet you've been unknowingly limiting that power through
simple, correctable mistakes.
This is exactly what Padre Pio revealed to countless souls who sought his guidance, that the Eucharist contains infinite potential for transformation, but most people receive only a fraction of its blessings because they don't understand how to prepare their hearts properly. The saint who could see into souls would often weep when he witnessed how many good Catholics approached the altar without truly understanding the magnitude of what they were about to receive. Padre Pio experienced mystical unions with Jesus during every Mass he celebrated, often taking hours to complete the liturgy because he would become lost in ecstatic communion with the divine. He would later describe these moments as being transported to Calvary itself, witnessing the crucifixion as if he were standing at the foot of the cross. When he received communion, his soul would be flooded with such intense divine love that his body would sometimes levitate, and witnesses reported seeing his face shine with supernatural light. This wasn't just spiritual poetry. This was the reality of what proper reception of the Eucharist can accomplish in a soul that's properly prepared. The key word here is prepared. Padre Pio taught that approaching Holy Communion without proper preparation was like coming to a royal banquet, dressed in rags, or like trying to pour precious wine into a dirty vessel. The graces are always there, waiting to be received, but our hearts must be properly disposed to contain them. He would compare unprepared souls to people standing in a downpour with closed umbrellas. The rain of divine grace is falling abundantly, but they remain dry because they haven't opened themselves to receive it. This preparation isn't complicated, but it is essential. It involves specific interior movements of the soul that create the perfect conditions for divine grace to flow freely. When Padre Pio prepared for communion, he would spend hours in prayer, examining his conscience, making acts of faith, hope, and love, and most importantly, cultivating what he called holy hunger, an intense spiritual desire for union with our Jesus that made his soul like a magnet for divine grace. He taught that this same preparation was available to every Catholic, regardless of their spiritual maturity or life circumstances. What breaks my heart is knowing that many devoted Catholics spend years, even decades, receiving communion regularly, yet never experiencing the profound peace, healing, and transformation that should be the natural fruit of this sacred encounter. They continue struggling with the same anxieties, the same broken relationships, the same spiritual dryness, never realizing that the solution to their deepest needs has been available to them every Sunday, and potentially every day, through the proper reception of Holy Communion according to Padre Pio's profound insights. You rush through the church doors 5 minutes after Mass has started, slide into a pew still thinking about your work stress, your family conflicts, or your weekend plans, and 30 minutes later, you're standing in the communion line wondering why your spiritual life feels so stagnant. This scenario, which Padre Pio witnessed countless times, represents the first and perhaps most damaging mistake that blocks the full graces of the Eucharist from transforming your life. The great mystic saint taught that approaching Holy Communion without proper interior preparation was like trying to receive a king while your soul's home was cluttered, dirty, and unprepared for such an honored guest. Padre Pio would often tell his spiritual children that the soul receiving communion unprepared was like Mary and Joseph finding no room at the inn. Jesus wants to come but finds no suitable place to rest and work his miracles. The saint who could see the state of souls would describe how unprepared hearts appeared to him like houses with all the lights off, doors locked and windows closed, while the divine guest stood outside waiting for an invitation that never came. With proper reverence and preparation, he witnessed how these souls would receive the same Jesus who dwelt within him so powerfully, yet experienced little to no transformation because their hearts weren't ready to cooperate with grace. The preparation Padre Pio recommended wasn't lengthy or complicated, but it was intentional and heartfelt. Even if you only have 5 minutes before Mass begins, he taught specific practices that could prepare your soul like a beautifully adorned sanctuary. First, he would have you examine your conscience, not to find reasons to feel guilty, but to identify any barriers between you and Jesus that need to be addressed. Are you harboring resentment? Are there sins you need to confess? Are you distracted by worldly concerns that are stealing your attention from the divine? This honest self-examination creates humility and spiritual hunger. Second, Padre Pio emphasized making acts of faith before approaching the altar. He would encourage people to spend time really believing, really accepting with their whole heart that they were about to receive Jesus Christ himself, not a symbol, not a representation, but the actual person who created the universe and died for their salvation. He would have people repeat internally, Jesus, I believe you are truly present in the Eucharist. I believe you want to come into my heart. I believe you have the power to heal, transform, and bless me beyond my wildest dreams. This act of faith creates the spiritual space necessary for miracles to occur. If you believe that proper preparation could unlock miraculous graces in your life starting from your very next communion, write in the comments, I'm ready for this transformation, and make sure to subscribe to our channel for more life-changing teachings from the saints. Don't let another Sunday pass where you receive Jesus with an unprepared heart. The blessings you've been praying for might be waiting for you in your next properly prepared communion. Picture this scene that Padre Pio witnessed repeatedly. Devoted Catholics mechanically reciting, Lord, I am not worthy that you should enter under my roof, while their minds wandered to grocery lists, work meetings, or personal worries, never pausing to truly mean these sacred words or to stir up the faith and love that should accompany them. This represents the second critical error that prevents the full flowering of Eucharistic graces. receiving the body of Christ without engaging our hearts in conscious acts of faith and love that create the spiritual atmosphere necessary for divine transformation. Padre Pio taught that the moments immediately before receiving communion were like preparing to welcome the most important visitor imaginable into your home. Just as you would prepare your heart and mind before greeting a beloved family member returning from a long journey, or before meeting someone you deeply admire, the soul should be actively engaged in stirring up faith, hope, and love as Jesus approaches in the Eucharist. The saint who experienced mystical raptures during Mass would describe how his soul would become like a furnace of love in the moments before communion, his heart burning with such intensity of desire for Jesus that he could barely contain the joy. The faith that Padre Pio encouraged wasn't just intellectual belief, but heartfelt conviction that ignited the entire soul. He would teach people to spend the moments before receiving communion making specific acts of faith. Jesus, I believe you are the Son of God. I believe you died for my sins. I believe you rose from the dead. I believe you are truly present in this Eucharist. I believe you have the power to heal my body, mind, and spirit. I believe nothing is impossible for you. This wasn't empty repetition. Each phrase was meant to kindle a flame of faith that would prepare the soul to receive extraordinary graces. Equally important was the cultivation of love. Padre Pio would encourage his spiritual children to spend time before communion remembering Jesus' love for them, his birth in poverty, his hidden years of labor, his public ministry of healing and teaching, his passion and death, his resurrection and ascension. But more than remembering, he encouraged people to respond with love. Jesus, I love you for all you have done for me. I love you for dying for my sins. I love you for never abandoning me. I love you for coming to me in this communion. I want to love you more than anything else in my life. This movement of love creates what Padre Pio called magnetic attraction that draws divine grace powerfully into the soul. The tragic reality is that many Catholics have never been taught to actively engage their faith and love before receiving communion. They approach the altar with the same emotional engagement they might have when picking up mail or running errands, present in body, but absent in heart. Padre Pio would weep to see souls missing such extraordinary opportunities for grace simply because no one had taught them how to prepare their hearts to receive the King of Kings with the faith and love that opens the floodgates of heaven. There's a reality that many modern Catholics prefer to avoid discussing. Yet Padre Pio confronted it with both compassion and unflinching honesty, the grave spiritual danger of receiving Holy Communion while in a state of mortal sin. This third error doesn't just limit the graces of communion. According to church teaching and Padre Pio's insights, it actually constitutes a form of sacrilege that wounds both the soul and the Sacred Heart of Jesus. The saint who could read, souls like open books, would often gently but firmly guide people to the confessional before allowing them to receive communion, saving them from committing this spiritual tragedy. Padre Pio understood that in our modern world, the concept of mortal sin has become uncomfortable and often ignored. Yet he never compromised on this crucial truth because he loved souls too deeply to allow them to harm themselves spiritually. He would explain that mortal sin creates a complete separation between the soul and God. Like a power line that's been cut, the connection is severed and grace cannot flow. When someone in this state receives communion, instead of receiving life and blessing, they're placing the body of Christ into a soul that's spiritually dead, creating a contradiction that causes spiritual harm rather than healing. The saint who bore the wounds of Christ in his own body would often say, "Whoever receives communion unworthily wounds the very heart of Jesus." This wasn't meant to terrify people away from the Eucharist, but to help them understand the incredible sacredness of what they were receiving. He would compare it to inviting a beloved friend into a house filled with poison gas. The friend wants to come and bless, but the environment makes it impossible. Similarly, serious unconfessed sin creates an atmosphere where the graces of communion cannot operate effectively. Padre Pio's solution was always the same: the beautiful sacrament of confession. He would spend up to 15 hours a day in the confessional, helping souls prepare properly for communion. He understood that confession wasn't a burden or an obstacle to receiving Jesus. It was the key that unlocked the door for grace to flow freely. He would tell people, "Don't be afraid of confession. Jesus is waiting there to forgive, heal, and prepare your heart to receive Him fully in communion. The graces you'll receive in a properly prepared communion are worth any temporary discomfort of admitting your sins." What many Catholics don't realize is that even venial sins, while not creating the same separation as mortal sins, still create obstacles to receiving the full graces of communion. Padre Pio encouraged frequent confession not out of scrupulosity but out of love. He wanted souls to experience the incredible peace, joy, and transformation that comes when Jesus enters a heart that's been cleansed and prepared through the sacrament of reconciliation. He would often say that some of the most powerful miracles he witnessed occurred in people who had properly prepared for communion through a good confession. The Mass has ended, the final blessing has been given, and streams of Catholics immediately begin filing out of church, chatting about lunch plans or weekend activities, while Jesus Christ remains present within their hearts, waiting for acknowledgement, waiting for thanksgiving, waiting for the intimate conversation that could unlock miracles. This scene, which broke Padre Pio's heart repeatedly, represents the fourth critical error that prevents Catholics from receiving the full graces available through Holy Communion: the failure to spend time in thanksgiving and intimate communion with Jesus after receiving Him. Padre Pio would often say that the moments immediately following communion were the most precious and powerful moments available to any soul on earth. He would remain in prayer for at least 15 minutes after receiving, sometimes much longer, completely absorbed in intimate conversation with Jesus. Witnesses reported seeing him so lost in thanksgiving that he seemed to forget the physical world entirely, his face glowing with supernatural joy and peace. He would later describe these moments as being in paradise, experiencing a foretaste of the beatific vision while still on earth. The saint who experienced mystical unions with Christ taught that these post-communion moments were when the most extraordinary graces were dispensed. He would tell people, "When you've just received communion, Jesus is more present to you than at any other moment in your life. This is when you can ask for anything, when miracles happen most easily, when healing flows most powerfully." Yet most people waste these precious minutes thinking about mundane things or rushing off to their next activity. He compared it to having a private audience with the Pope, but spending the entire time looking at your watch or thinking about other things. Padre Pio's recommended thanksgiving wasn't complicated, but it was intentional and heartfelt. He would encourage people to spend at least 10 minutes in silent prayer after communion, following a simple but powerful pattern. First, adoration, simply acknowledging Jesus' presence within their heart and worshiping Him. Second, thanksgiving, expressing gratitude for the incredible gift of His presence and for all His blessings. Third, petition, asking for specific graces, healings, conversions, and miracles while Jesus was most intimately present. Fourth, offering, dedicating their day, their work, their relationships, and their very lives to Him. The tragedy that Padre Pio witnessed was souls missing the most powerful prayer opportunities of their lives simply because they didn't understand the importance of these post-communion moments. He would see people receive Jesus and then immediately become distracted by worldly concerns, essentially treating the Creator of the universe like an unwelcome guest who should be quickly forgotten. He would often weep, saying, if people only knew what they were missing, if they only understood the graces available to them in those precious moments after communion, they would never want to leave the church. They would treasure those minutes like the most valuable moments of their entire week. Walking into the sacred space where the miracle of the Mass unfolds, Padre Pio would be heartbroken to witness what has become commonplace in many modern churches. People dressed as if they were going to the beach or to run errands, chatting casually in the communion line, checking their phones or approaching the altar with the same attitude they might have while waiting in line at a grocery store. This fifth error, showing external disrespect and mechanical behavior during the most sacred moments of our faith, creates a barrier that prevents the full graces of the Eucharist from transforming our lives. Padre Pio understood that our external behavior reflects and shapes our internal disposition. When we dress carelessly for Mass, when we act casually during the most sacred moments, When we approach communion with mechanical movements and distracted minds, we're essentially telling Jesus that this encounter isn't particularly important to us. The saint who experienced such profound reverence during Mass that he would sometimes levitate or become absorbed in mystical ecstasy taught that our bodies, minds, and souls should all be engaged in honoring the incredible mystery we're about to receive. The way we dress for Mass was, for Padre Pio, a form of prayer itself. He would encourage people to dress as if they were going to meet the most important person in their lives, because they were. He understood that when we take care to dress appropriately, we're preparing not just our bodies but our souls for a sacred encounter. When we dress casually or inappropriately, we're unconsciously diminishing the importance of what we're about to experience. Our clothing becomes a prayer of either reverence or indifference. Even more important than external appearance was the attitude of heart during the approach to communion. Padre Pio would teach people to walk to the altar as if they were walking to meet Jesus himself, which of course they were. He encouraged slow, reverent steps, eyes focused on the tabernacle or crucifix, heart prepared with prayers of faith and love. He would say, "Don't rush to Jesus as if he were just another item on your to-do list. Approach him as the shepherds approached the manger, with wonder, reverence, and joy." This reverent approach creates the spiritual atmosphere necessary for grace to flow abundantly. The mechanical behaviors that grieved Padre Pio most were the empty repetition of prayers without meaning, the automatic genuflection without reverence, the reception of communion without conscious awareness of what was happening. He would often say, "Jesus doesn't want robots or people going through motions. He wants hearts that are awake, souls that are alive, people who understand they're about to receive the most incredible gift imaginable." When we approach communion with genuine reverence, awareness, and love, we create the conditions for the extraordinary graces that Padre Pio experienced and taught others to receive. In the profound silence that follows the reception of Holy Communion, when Jesus Christ dwells most intimately within your heart, lies the most powerful prayer opportunity of your entire life. Yet most Catholics let these precious moments slip away without asking for anything specific, without presenting their deepest needs to the one who has unlimited power to heal, bless, and transform. This sixth error identified by Padre Pio represents one of the most tragic missed opportunities in the spiritual lives of countless faithful Catholics who regularly receive communion, but rarely experience the miracles and transformations they desperately need. Padre Pio would often marvel at the paradox he witnessed. People would spend weeks, months, even years praying for specific intentions, asking the saints to intercede for their needs, begging God to answer their prayers. Yet when Jesus was most intimately present to them in Holy Communion, when he was literally dwelling within their hearts, they would fail to ask him directly for what they needed most. The saint who experienced countless miracles and who facilitated thousands of healings understood that the moments immediately following communion were when the veil between heaven and earth was thinnest, when divine power was most accessible, when specific requests were most likely to be granted. The great mystic would teach his spiritual children to come to communion with what he called holy shopping lists. Specific, heartfelt requests prepared in advance and presented to Jesus during those sacred post-communion moments. These weren't grocery lists of selfish demands, but carefully considered prayers for spiritual growth, healing for themselves and others, conversion of family members, resolution of difficult situations, guidance for important decisions, and grace to overcome persistent sins or weaknesses. He would say, "Don't waste the time when Jesus is closest to you by thinking about nothing important. This is when you can move heaven and earth with your prayers." Padre Pio's own post-communion prayers were legendary among those who knew him. He would spend considerable time after each Mass presenting specific intentions to Jesus, often becoming so absorbed in these conversations that he would lose track of time entirely. Witnesses reported seeing him weep tears of joy, smile with inexplicable peace, or become so still that he seemed to have entered another dimension entirely. When asked about these moments, he would simply say, "I was talking with Jesus about all the things that matter most, and he was answering me in ways that go beyond words." The saint understood that Jesus delights in being asked for specific graces because it demonstrates our faith in his power and our trust in his love. He would encourage people to be bold in their requests, reminding them that they were speaking to the one who multiplied loaves and fishes, who calmed storms, who raised the dead, and who conquered sin and death itself. He would say, "Don't ask Jesus for small things when he's prepared to give you great things. Don't ask for help when you could ask for miracles. Don't ask for temporary relief when you could ask for permanent transformation. The only limit to what he can do for you is the size of your faith and the boldness of your requests." Tonight, as you prepare for sleep, I want you to imagine what your life could look like if every communion you receive becomes a source of miraculous transformation instead of routine ritual. Picture yourself approaching the altar next Sunday, not as someone going through familiar motions, but as someone who understands the profound teachings of Padre Pio and knows exactly how to prepare your heart to receive the full power of Jesus's presence. This isn't just a beautiful dream. This is the reality that awaits every Catholic who applies the wisdom that this great saint has shared with us through his life, his writings, and his example. The transformation begins with a simple decision: to never again approach Holy Communion unprepared. Starting with your very next Mass, commit to arriving early enough to spend at least 5 minutes in quiet preparation, examining your conscience, stirring up your faith, and creating what Padre Pio called holy hunger for Jesus. Even if you've been attending Mass for decades, even if you consider yourself a devout Catholic, approach this as if you're receiving communion for the first time with wonder, reverence, and expectation. Let Padre Pio's words echo in your heart. Prepare to receive the King of Kings, and he will transform you into royalty of the Spirit. The second commitment involves cultivating the practice of thanksgiving that Padre Pio considered absolutely essential. After receiving communion, resist the urge to immediately think about worldly concerns or to rush out of church. Instead, spend at least 10 minutes in intimate conversation with Jesus following the pattern the saint taught. Adoration, thanksgiving, petition, and offering. Present your specific needs, your deepest desires, your most impossible situations to the one who dwells within your heart. Watch as the graces you've been seeking for years begin to manifest in ways that will amaze you. But perhaps the most important element is approaching each communion with the burning faith that characterized Padre Pio himself. Don't just believe intellectually that Jesus is present in the Eucharist. Let that belief ignite your entire soul with love, gratitude, and expectation. Remember that you're not just receiving bread blessed by a priest, you're receiving the actual body, blood, soul, and divinity of Jesus Christ, with all the power that raised him from the dead and all the love that moved him to die for your salvation. When you truly grasp this reality, every communion becomes a personal encounter with the divine that has the power to heal, transform, and bless in ways that defy human understanding. The saints throughout history have experienced what you can experience, not because they were superhuman, but because they understood how to cooperate with grace. Padre Pio's teachings about proper reception of Holy Communion aren't complex theological concepts reserved for mystics and scholars. They're practical, accessible truths that any Catholic can apply immediately. Don't wait for the perfect moment to begin implementing these practices. Don't convince yourself that you need to become more holy first. The moment to transform your spiritual life through the proper reception of Holy Communion is now, tonight, as you prepare your heart for